Good morning from our world headquarters in New York. I'm Manus Crenny.
And from our studios in London, I'm Danny Berger. Welcome to Bloomberg Brief. Let's set your agenda.
Silicon Valley shakeup. OpenAI taps former CEO of Twitch as Sam Altman joins Microsoft. We've got the latest in the boardroom drama. Javier Milei opens a new era in Argentina. The outsider wins the nation's presidency, promising swift measures to pull the economy out of crisis. And bonds post their best month since March, as the rally is set for its big test with today's 20-year auction. A very good morning. We'll know whether we've got indigestion in the bond market in a moment, but we've 3 weeks of velocity, all built on a peak Fed narrative and a pivot in March. 30% probability of a rate cut in March. Green on the screen this morning. You're breaking through that big psychological barrier of 4,500. I mean, built on what? Soft landing, Goldilocks, immaculate disinflation. Take your choice. Since the end of October, we're up 12% on the NASDAQ. We're looking at stocks like Amazon up 20%. The Nikkei, that kissed a 33-year high this morning, but get ready for a little bit more volatility. Money flowing in, $27 million flowed into the VIX ETFs. That's the 7th straight week of where you're seeing that kind of money roll in. Bank of America's Hartnett says that on these markets, you want to sell this epic rally. Keep an eye on Microsoft. It's up this morning. Sam Altman is to join Microsoft. What does that mean for AI? Is it still worth $86 billion? Stock 600 up a small pip or two this morning. We've got a warning from the ECB. Wunsch warns markets are taking too optimistic view on rate cuts. And Goldman Sachs say you want to be overweight growth stocks in Europe. That takes us to the SMI. Down this morning, you're looking at Julius Baer under pressure this morning, down 9% at one juncture. They are warning very, very clearly profit will be crimped because of provisions of 80 million Swiss francs. Danny, good morning.
Good morning, Manus. Well, it is the run-up to Turkey Day, at least in the U.S. Maybe people will be spending less on their turkey, maybe because of Ozempic, maybe because the economy is weakening. All of that soft data we've been getting has been hammering the dollar. It is lower again this morning by about 0.4%. We are trading at an August low off of those bets of a rate cut, 30% odds that we will cut, the Fed will cut by March. We also heard from Barr over the weekend on Friday saying that essentially we might be at the peak or near the peak of rates. That's also been putting pressure on yields, but for the morning they're moving higher just by a basis point, not by a lot at this moment. But as you mentioned, Manus, we're going to get the test in the form of $16 billion worth of a 20-year auction today. Meanwhile, European nat gas futures have jumped. At one point they were up by more than 4%, by more than 6.9% off the back of the Iran-backed Houthi rebels seizing a vessel in the Red Sea, reigniting that fear of a wider conflict in the Middle East. It's also cold, and we're going to have an OPEC Plus meeting with Manus shipping off to Vienna for covering that for us. But Manus, ahead of that, the showdown is set up. We've both mentioned this. Very different opinions of where the global rate cycle is at the moment. Barr, as I said that we're near the peak or at the peak of the tightening cycle. But Wunsch, just an hour or so ago, saying that the very fact that we're pricing in rate cuts, that everyone pricing in rate cuts, makes the ECB more likely to do the opposite and hike to tighten conditions.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the conundrum for every central bank out there. If these markets get way ahead of where they want to be, that's where they've got to try and restrain, curb our enthusiasm. But of course, the debate is this, Danny. It is about real rates. And you see this most dramatically in the US, where the real rates have rolled over. And to that extent, that is where the dollar is front-running a structural change in rates next year from the Federal Reserve. We'll put that to Kit Juckes in a very short time. The precipitous drop in real rates is at the end of King Dollar and that splendid dollar trade. Let's turn back to the tech drama, because Sam Altman is headed to Microsoft. The former OpenAI CEO gets replaced by the former CEO of Twitch. Microsoft's Satya Nadella announced the move on LinkedIn in a post writing, quote, "We're extremely excited to share the news that Sam Altman and Greg Brockman will be joining Microsoft to lead a new advanced AI research team." What does that mean for the valuation of AI? And what does it mean for Microsoft? Alex Webb joins us to disaggregate that. So my first question with Danny this morning is, is alt AI then still worth $86 billion? Let's start there.
it really depends who Sam Altman takes to Microsoft with him. As things stand, I would say probably yes. They've got a huge amount of technology. They have a huge amount of talent. Talent is the key word here. There is not a huge amount of top-tier AI talent out there in the marketplace. There's a huge amount of support, it seems, judging by social media posts, for Sam Altman within the ranks of OpenAI. If he brings some of that talent with him to Microsoft, then, of course, the effect on OpenAI's valuation would be hugely deleterious.
I saw on Twitter somewhere, which I thought was really funny, when there was talk about Sam Altman coming back. It's like one day getting fired and being brought next is the Apple and Steve Jobs of the TikTok era sped up so much. But I think it kind of encapsulates how odd this is. It moves so quickly over the weekend. Can we just get back to the kind of basic thing here, Alex? What happened?
Well, to the extent that we know, and I do recommend everybody goes and reads the big take on the Bloomberg Terminal on Bloomberg.com by my colleagues Max Chafkin and Rachel Metz, it's really to do with AI safety. That seems to be the smoke signals coming out of the board of OpenAI, which is off. A lot of the people on that board, they are seem to be relatively closely aligned with the effective altruism movement, which is all about actually kind of making sure that AI is safe, using the profits from business in order to, in theory, improve the world, something that Sam Bankman-Fried was closely aligned with as well. There seems to have been some concern about whether that was still happening at OpenAI, at least in the eyes of the chief scientist and the board. That seems to have been what prompted this coup. When you look at it, though, it doesn't seem as though the coup itself was massively well thought through, perhaps. They got him out, but if he can go to Microsoft, then perhaps he didn't have a non-compete. It's very, very curious.
Yeah, I said the same exact thing to Manis this morning on that non-compete issue.
So where does this leave us? I mean, do we think then that Microsoft's going to, and I said Alt-AI, OpenAI, excuse me, do I then extrapolate that the CEO and the chairman have now gone to Microsoft and we're going to have... I mean, they've tried for 20 years to build their AI, and that's the whole reason of why they jumped in with their investment into OpenAI. So how do you extrapolate? How do you think the market will extrapolate this?
So if you think about this landscape right now, the AI is a cloud product. It is not necessarily that people are going to pay top dollar for the AI tools themselves. They pay top dollar for the processing power that is needed in the cloud to make them work. So Google, Microsoft, and Amazon are the three big players in the cloud. Google has its own captive AI arm, Google DeepMind. It owns that company 100%. It can do whatever it wants with it, more or less. Microsoft has a very close relationship with OpenAI. It does not own it. It has a 49% stake, gets a lot of preferential treatment, first dibs. It does not own that company. Amazon has an increasingly close relationship with Anthropic, that was a company founded by a bunch of people who left OpenAI. If it can now build its own captive AI arm, Facebook, Meta also has one, but it's not really in that cloud space in the same way, then it's actually a huge boon to Microsoft, because it means they own all the IP, they can do what they want with it. It is not just a close relationship with the supplier. They have their own division.
What does it mean, though, for them to be having this own division and still owning 13% of OpenAI? Is there not some form of cannibalization with that?
Well, 49% and the $13 billion.
Yes,
exactly.
Thank you.
Well, I would tend to suspect it's the opposite, right? It means, because, look, even if they hire the whole OpenAI team tomorrow, it's not going to happen, but just for argument's sake, if they were to do so, it would still take time to build all this technology themselves, right? What this gives them is a runway. They have the access to OpenAI's technology. Over time, they can start to build up their own internal capabilities. And at the same, even as they have access to what OpenAI does, it kind of looks like, and then maybe we might find more comes out in the wash, which will undermine this view. It kind of looks like Satya Nadella has played an absolute blinder and in picking up the most beneficial outcome from this weekend hullabaloo.
Which is so interesting because, of course, the reporting was that he was caught out by surprise by this whole thing, so maybe masterfully handled by surprise.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's a tremendous deal maker, Satya Nadella. We've seen over the years he's done some really smart deals at Microsoft. This increasingly looks like he's one of them.
Alex, thank you very much. On the saga of OpenAI, that's Bloomberg's Alex Webb. All right, let's get some of the other top stories which are trending on the terminal this morning. Now, Elon Musk has dismissed reports of him being anti-Semitic as bogus, and that it couldn't be further from the truth. Last week, a Musk post endorsing anti-Semitic content provoked outrage and alienated advertisers like Apple. The FT reports that several ad executives are urging ex-CEO Linda Yaccarino to resign.
Well, Bayer is suffering its biggest drop ever after a major legal and drug development setback. The German pharma and agricultural company stopped the main study on its top experimental medicine due to the lack of efficacy and lost a key U.S. trial against its weed killer Roundup.
And Bloomberg has learned that Chinese regulators are drafting a list of 50 developers eligible for a range of financing. This is the latest effort from China to put a floor under the property crisis. Manis.
Coming up, we're going to catch up with Kit Juckes, Chief FX Strategist at Societe Generale. Is it the end of King Dollar, Danny?
And Javier Milei wins Argentina's vote and promises to fix decades of policy mismanagement. We're going to have more on that later this hour on Bloomberg Brief. This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Danny Berger in London. Manish Cranny is in New York. Now, the ECB left interest rates on hold last month for the first time in its tightening cycle, and markets are betting on the central bank and the Fed and the BOE that they will cut next year. But Governing Council member Pierre Wunsch said this morning that is it a problem if everyone believes we're going to cut? It increases the risk that you have to correct in the other direction. Joining Manis and me now is Kit Juckes, Chief FX Strategist at SocGen, taking a break from preparing for the holiday season. So, Kit, I mean, this sentiment from Wunsch is something that basically everyone has been talking about, that the market rally has gone too far and will cause the Fed, the ECB, you name it, to reverse. Is that threat real right now?
Increasingly not, I would have said, in fact. So, I mean, you can't be sure about the Fed because this is just this extraordinary cycle that kind of keeps on reviving itself. But I would say there's enough signs now of underlying slowing that the excess savings pile is gradually being unwound into this Christmas season. The labor market is beginning to weaken. So I think I've seen enough to think, no, this is going to slow. The question is how much. And in that sense, it would be hard to turn that boat round. In Europe, we haven't had any growth all along, right? Europe, I mean, it's a 0.1, a 0.2 here for growth. It's recession is not that likely because when you're moving that slowly, it's hard to crash. It's to be sort of almost simple about it. But I don't think you can have a level of interest rates where suddenly there's enough borrowing and easy conditions that gets in the way of rate cuts in Europe next year. They will hold on with rates here for a long time. Maybe until sort of the fourth quarter of next year. But I don't think the idea they'll have to hike again, I think that's just kind of, they don't like what the market's pricing.
Well, maybe his comments were just sort of like over-ambitious in terms of the ability for the economy to propel itself on easier AFCON. But here's the question then that goes through the mind. If you look at euro dollar, it's rallied by, just over 4% since the end of September. You're looking at euro yen, it's rallied by 5.25%. I know yen has its own idiosyncrasies. Is that rally just all about dollar weakness, or is this Table Mountain for the euro rally?
It will be Table Mountain at some point. Let's put it this way. I think we've had a series over the longer term now of lower highs in euro dollar, and we're going to get another lower high. We're not going to get a new lower low for a while, but I wouldn't get too excited about it. I think there's other currencies that can do a bit better than that, but you have to view that in that sense. U.S. exceptionalism's taking a break because the economy's slowing. We've had more sensitivity to short-term interest rates driving the dollar than we've had for ages, and that's faded away. But we're not going to see the dollar weaken dramatically unless someone else can get some serious growth.
You said there are other currencies who can do better. Who is the ultimate beneficiary of what the dollar's doing now?
In a horrible, bumpy way, the biggest beneficiary is going to be the yen, because this is all about, this is all about interest rates, and dollar yen's moved with U.S. yields. The more they fall, the more dollar yen will go back the other way. And B, you've got a bunch of things happening in Japan. This might work. I mean, they might be the people who come out of this period having defeated deflation. They have companies who are making record profits. They have, I don't know, you read articles of, that they're changing the way their economy is structured away from the big firms towards smaller firms with more interesting wage packets for people. There's a lot of good things could sort of continue. And And if that does continue, then dollar yen doesn't belong anywhere near 150.
Well, if it doesn't belong, I was going to ask you about real rates, but you said it doesn't belong anywhere near 150, so let's go with the flow on that. I mean, PIMCO are building their position in yen. They're buying yen. They're preparing for 140. You think 150, it doesn't belong there. How much further below 140 does it belong then on the thesis you've just espoused?
I think 130's, very reachable in the next 18 months, to be honest. I just think it's going to be horribly painful to trade, but I think it's very reachable. You've got to remember,
Does it take them to blow YCC off to get to 130? I know Danny wants to jump in here. So briefly, does it take YCC to get blown off to get to 130?
Yes, definitely.
Did I just hear you were going to make a martini analogy?
I wrote about martini indices around the world at one point.
Wait, what is that? Just pricing of martinis?
Yeah, currency valuations on martinis.
Tell me, what is a Duke's martini right now? What does it tell us about the UK?
It doesn't do anything terribly surprising. It tells you that using a major chain of hotels, the most I paid for a martini was in Zurich, and the least I paid for a martini was in Tokyo. And London was pretty pricey too, but then, if you go to the Churchill bar, you're going to pay up for your martini.
Yeah, that's true. It depends where. Wait, Manus, I just want to put this down into the record because I think we had Paul Donovan talking about a beer index. Now we got a martini index. I want to know when vodka soda index is coming, tequila. So I don't know what the next index is going to be for us.
Yeah, but all I can say is, Kit Juckes, it is 5:18 p.m. in Hong Kong. It's 5:18 a.m. in New York.
5 p.m. somewhere.
It's 5 p.m. somewhere. That smoking jacket, you're ready for a martini any time of the day. That's Kit Juckes with the Martini Index live on Bloomberg Brief. I mean, the dimensions of this show, they take turns every day. OK, Juckes, off you go. 130 is his call on dollar yen. Let's have a snapshot on where the currencies are. There's no way dollar yen belongs at 130, according to Kit Juckes. Across the assets this morning, across the FX assets, you've got the dollar. Real rates are dropping. The dollar is down by a third of 1%. And yen, 148.40. 130 is on your cards for 2024. Good morning.
This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Danny Berger in London. Manus Cranny is in New York. So, Manus, a London-based insurance firm came out with a new estimate of the cost of having the World Cup in Qatar during the winter. They say that the top 5 European leagues spent $767 million in injury costs. That's up 30% from what it was the year before. And 2 months after the World Cup, there were 49 injuries in the Premier League and 56 injuries in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, and of the 417 players involved in the World Cup, 225 injuries between November 2022 and February of this year. So you are looking at time, you're looking at the opportunity, and it was the English Premier League that took the biggest hit. I'm just looking at the data here. 40% of the cost over the 5 leagues in the 2 months after the World Cup in Qatar. 49 of those injuries, 49 of those were in the Premier League. I took an injury myself.
I was going to say, Manus, I think we are very lucky that Bloomberg's top player ourselves didn't have to go on the sidelines from the huge stunts, the huge feats he pulled off at the Qatari World Cup.
There was no expense for it. Here you go.
Here we
look
go.
at that. You see? Yeah.
Did you have to get checked for a concussion after that, Manus? Did they have to do, the little eye test afterwards?
No, but I can tell you what. Do you see, actually, I mean, the amazing thing about Qatar, actually, I was there 9 times last year. When people say the word Qatar to me, it's sort of, I'm all over Qatar, which is the phenomena that was the World Cup. It was executed seamlessly. You literally zoom in through the airport, zoom out. But the cost of that ball, I mean, that is a unique football. I sent the producer, I said, I want a ball. And she came back with that tiny little thing.
Wait, can we look at that again? Because here's the question I want everyone to answer. Is Manus a giant or is that ball small? I'm not really certain, Manus. I think you might just be like the tallest human ever, and that's actually a normal-sized football.
No, do you know what it was? It was one of those things, you're waking up. This is every producer's nightmare. He wants a ball. What does he want a ball for? Yeah, it was that. Yay! It was a moment of victory. Listen, who's got the victory in you're very generous there now. OK, I think we've had enough of me knocking the ball around, so let's take that away. Who's the winner in AI?
All right, you want to talk about the winners in AI?
I do.
Maybe
I want to move on.
Right?
Less about me and more about AI.
You want to move on. I get it.
Go on.
I get it. So sadly, we don't have tape of Manus like interacting with ChatGPT or something to show you all. But yeah, the drama is all about OpenAI this morning, isn't it, Manus?
It's what is the value of Microsoft now? Is this, I like the way Alex sort of wrapped it up for us, which was, could this be sort of a triumphalist moment for Microsoft where he gets Sam Altman and Brockman on board and they build their own center of excellence in AI. We know that part of the great angst within OpenAI was the accelerated pace with which Sam Altman wanted to deliver AI, or we believe that's part of the angst.
Yeah, and that board we showed was the Friday close. Since then, Satya Nadella announced that Sam Altman and the board chair would be coming to join them, Microsoft shares are up 2.33%. So maybe Microsoft gets the best of both worlds in this outcome from the shakeup over at OpenAI.
Well, we'll put all those questions to our reporter in the next 30 minutes. Don't cry for me, Argentina. Javier Milei is the new president, and the promises are to fix decades of policy mismanagement. We'll discuss on Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Brief. I'm Manus Crenny in New York.
And I'm Danny Berger in London. Here's what you need to know. Silicon Valley shakeup. OpenAI taps the former CEO of Twitch as Sam Altman joins Microsoft. We got the latest on this board drama. Javier Milei opens a new era in Argentina. The outsider wins the nation's presidency, promising swift measures to pull the economy out of a crisis. And bonds post their best month since March. Now the rally is set for a big test with today's 20-year auction. So it's $16 billion that are on deck after a strong month for bonds. Can it hold on? Well, when it comes to the Bloomberg dollar, it is weakening, down about 1/3% off the back of that softer data, off the back of Michael Barr talking about the idea that we are at or near a peak. Now, we're just talking to Kit Juckes earlier in the hour, who said he's seen enough. The data is softer. They ain't going to hike again, even though Wunsch talks about that maybe they are going to hike because the markets are pricing in cuts for the ECB. So your 10-year yield, that's higher by just under 2 basis points, while European nat gas futures jump. They're up just under 3%. We're going to talk with Bobby Ghosh about this shortly. At one point, they were up 6.9% after the Iran-backed Houthi rebels seized a vessel in the Red Sea. Man, it's really reigniting that fear. Is the conflict in the Middle East going to spread further? Yeah, well, this is the very issue that we brought to the Iranian foreign minister. Of course, he sidestepped it and got rather vexed by the whole conversation in terms of where they would deploy more to. More with Bobby Ghosh in just a moment. You're entering into the fourth week of velocity on the upside for equities. Can that endure? Soft landing, Goldilocks, immaculate disinflation, whatever it is, you're breaking through some of the highest calls on the S&P 500 for the end of the year. So you're breaking above the 4,500 level, up 3.5 pips. You'd hardly call it dramatic, but the Nasdaq is up 12% since the end of October. You're looking at Amazon up 20% since the end of October. Money is flooding in to the VIX ETFs, and of course Hartnett over at Bank of America had said sell this epic rally. Stocks in Europe this morning, they're just managing to hold on a very slight bit of green. You got Wunsch warning that markets are too optimistic on 100 basis points of cuts that are priced into the European complex for next year. So we have a little hint there. Julius Baer is the weight on the shoulders of the SMI this morning. This is the smaller private bank on Bahnhofstrasse, down 10%. They have exposure, we understand, speaking to sources. They're writing down some of their exposure to the retail empire of the Austrian tycoon René Benko. So, Danny, that's the drag on the SMI. This is their interim results. They never really speak to the press. We have asked for an interview with them. At the moment, it is the SMI that takes the weight on the downside this morning with Julius Baer. Danny. Yeah, and maybe, you know, the SMI, the Julius Baer shares are down, but overall, man, it's been a blockbuster run for stocks, as you pointed out. And that kind of gets to what we're talking about Kit Juckes about. He said he's seen enough. The data is softening, and we will see cuts next year for the ECB. Maybe it's fourth quarter. But on the other hand, the market has bought the soft landing narrative, despite the cuts that they're pricing in. So Kit says it's kind of the end of the run for the dollar, but is it the end of the run for the stock market, too, in that context?
Yeah, look, you've had a fairly good run. The question is, real rates are rolling over. That's where the real vexation is for the dollar. We've got this monster risk-on narrative in equities, in bonds. It's the first positive month in bonds that we've seen all year. So I think all of those factors go into part of the reason of why you're just seeing a little bit of an offer on the dollar. But geopolitics, that's what the next 30 minutes is about. Well, not all of it. We'll have a little bit of AI as well. But for now, it is about Javier Milei, the next Argentinian president, beating the economy minister, Sergio Massa, in Sunday's runoff election. The libertarian outsider has vowed to slash inflation, take a chainsaw to the state. Speaking to his supporters on his victory, he hailed the result as, quote, a miracle.
Today is an historic night for Argentina. Thank you very much to everyone who came. Thank you to everyone who made this possible. Thank you to the team that has been working for 2 years to transform Argentina and to achieve the miracle of having a liberal and libertarian president. Thank you very much.
Many before him promised a miracle of dollarization, of breaking inflation. Can this president do something different? Bobby Ghosh is our Bloomberg resident opinion columnist on a Monday morning. Here we go. Can he do something spectacular? Many presidents have tried. What's the risk?
Well, the risk is enormous. It has to be said. He is an economist. He's the first economist to be elected president of Argentina, and not just in he's a practiced economist. He's been senior economist to banks, to financial companies. So he does have some chops, but he's an economist of the liberal school. He believes in the Austrian school of sort of individualism, that libertarian idea. He said he's going to scrap the central bank. He's going to dollarize the economy. He's going to cut vast sections of the state out, and all of this sounds wild and even exaggerated. But he is serious. These have been his consistent positions for quite a long time. The question is, does he, not just whether he wants to get this done, the question is whether the economy can wear it, whether the economy has the strength. Because what he's proposing, dollarization, for instance, if you look at the figures, they just don't have the reserves to pull that off. So can the state actually bear the weight, the pain that he's proposing? And secondly, and this may be as important, does he have a team? His party has a handful of seats in Parliament, which means Parliament is going to be sort of a mess throughout his presidency. But he has not really pulled together a team of people that he has been able to say, this is going to be my cabinet. Here are some serious people. And international investors, Argentinians will be looking at that, and now they'll be wondering, okay, we've elected this guy. Populists, as we've learned elsewhere in the world, very good at winning elections, not very good at actually running countries.
Well, what does the government actually look like if he can't pull a team together, if he can't actually get this kind of stuff done? Is it Argentina in paralysis?
Well, yes, it could very well be. This is a huge leap of faith that the Argentinians have taken. Now he could go two ways. One is he could try to pull together a kind of government of known figures, people from within the establishment in Argentina, but that's not his style. His style is, and his whole persona is, I'm anti-establishment. So the chances are that he will pull together a team of outsiders, people that have never really had that much experience in running a country and running an economy. And if I were an investor in Argentina, that would be something that would concern me enormously.
Let's see. I mean, the markets actually, ironically, are closed today.
Monday's
so
a holiday,
we're not going to find anything new on that. Danny mentioned the price of natural gas in Europe. It's spiking a little bit higher this morning. I want to get your sense of where we are. This is Houthi rebels, we understand, seizing a Japanese chartered vessel in the Red Sea. In of itself, what does that signify?
Well, the Houthis are a kind of, they've evolved over the period that I've been traveling in Yemen from a sort of ragtag rebel force into quite a sophisticated force that is backed by Iran with quite sophisticated weapons, including, it would appear, some helicopters, but also missiles and rockets and drones. So they're capable of doing quite a lot of damage in one of the world's most vital sea lanes, which is the Red Sea. They have said over and over again since the fighting in Gaza began that they intend to do damage on those shipping lanes. They put out these very slick videos of blowing up ships and so on. This particular ship, it was a car carrier.
Yeah.
It was not an oil or gas carrier. It was empty. It was going from Turkey to India. It's owned by a British company that in itself is part owned by an Israeli shipping magnate. And that's their plan. The way the Houthis are playing this is we're hurting Israel. And it's consistent with their overall political messaging. Death to Israel has been part of their sloganeering for now over a decade. They are maverick. They are sort of a little unpredictable, but they are very much under Iran's control. So for all that Iran says, and I remember your interview with the Iranian foreign minister, for all that Iran likes to say, oh, we have no control over these people, I'm sorry, I don't believe that for a second.
And the oil market was really quick, Bobby, to price out any war risk premium. Does this incident show that maybe that happened too quickly?
If this were an oil carrier, I would be very concerned. If there are Israeli-owned or even Israeli part-owned oil/gas carriers in the Red Sea, I would be concerned. Beyond that, I think not quite yet. The Houthis have, to use a naval term, fired a shot across the bow. If they take this up to one more level, then I think we'll see those oil prices being reconsidered. For now, I think the main concern is what happens to the 25 crew members on that ship and what happens to the ship itself.
I think it's if there's an evolution in Strait of Hormuz, that perhaps that's a more of an invective for the oil market. The case on the hostage and the hostage negotiation, I mean, on social media yesterday, there were protests at the front door of Bibi's office. This is the streets of Israel feeling left out of what's happening inside the government of power. But where are we in terms of hostage negotiation?
So over the weekend, there have been conflicting messages. There were reports, including in the Washington Post, to suggest that a breakthrough in hostage negotiations were about to happen.
Yes.
More than 50 women and children would be released in exchange for pauses in the fighting. Israel would agree to pause the bombing of Gaza for specific periods of time and release some Palestinian prisoners who are in Israeli detention. The White House then came out to say that we have to manage these expectations and saying we may be on the verge of a breakthrough, but not quite yet. When you're dealing with a group like Hamas and when you're dealing with inflamed opinion in Israel, it's very difficult to conduct any negotiations, and it's very difficult to believe in anything until it's happened. So my view on this is this would be fantastic if it were true, but I'll wait to actually see those hostages walk across the border before I get my hopes up.
All right. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, Bobby. Really great to get you in this morning. Bobby Ghosh, thanks so much. Now, coming up, we're going to dive deeper into the shakeup at OpenAI, Sam Altman's new position at Microsoft. But, Manus, it's a big week for AI. You know, we got NVIDIA earnings tomorrow, too.
Yep. The question the market will ask itself is Sam Altman joining Microsoft. Bobby just sat down in the chair. He said, actually, Manus, this story is really all about two leaders, which is Satya Nadella versus Sundar Pichai, who won. And at the moment, it looks as if Satya Nadella is 1-0 in the AI score. Microsoft pre-market up 2%. And Meta, of course, what does it mean for the rest of the field in regards to AI? Does it open up an opportunity? Meta up 0.25% right here on Bloomberg. It's your Monday edition of Bloomberg Brief. I'm Manus Cranny in New York. Danny Berger alongside me in London. So the Prime Minister is making a speech, Danny, this morning about tax ahead of the autumn statement, and this is it. We can't permanently have bigger government, but of course vowing to cut tax, reward hard work, of course, the very conservative ethos and the very core of conservatism, and build domestic energy. We want to cut taxes carefully. and sustainably. So this is about dangling the carrot in an election year as we see it of tax cuts. But what kind of tax cuts, Danny? Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, the fear and the memory and the PTSD of the Liz Truss tax cuts will certainly be alive in everyone's memory of what happened when the gilt market seized after that. So Jeremy Hunt, for example, I was watching him on the Sunday shows, is being very careful to say we want them to be lower, but we want to do so in a responsible way. So it's trying to, again, as you say, dangle that carrot without causing the market to seize up again as inflation still grips the UK.
Well, let's see how the gilt market reacts to that. You're just looking at cable at the moment. It's a little bit higher on the day, but that's more to do with dollar weakness rather than strength. Yeah. 124.76 up an eighth, or 14 pips at the moment. Back to our top story, OpenAI and the ousting. The ousting of the company's former CEO. He's set to join Microsoft, along with the former president, who quit on Friday. Satya Nadella posted this on LinkedIn. We're extremely excited to share the news. Sam Altman and Greg Brockman, together with colleagues, will be joining Microsoft to lead a new advanced AI research team. What does it mean for Microsoft? Azim Azhar is the author of Exponential View newsletter and host of Bloomberg original series Exponentially. Well, it's an exponential move for Microsoft. Good morning. What does it mean? What's your first take? Good to see you.
It's going to make a great movie. Good morning to you, Manus. I think what it means is that Satya Nadella is demonstrating some really fearsome capabilities as a CEO. He took a big bet on OpenAI a year or so ago, and it started to play out. Microsoft has a lead over its big tech competitors in putting these products into its existing suite of services. And then we had this implosion on Friday with the ouster of Sam Altman. It was very, very surprising. And within 48 hours, Nadella has secured, in a sense, Microsoft's AI future by bringing Altman, his lieutenant Brockman, and no doubt many dozens of staffers into the Microsoft fold with access to all of Microsoft's compute resources and all of the capital that the firm can deploy at a new group like this.
What does OpenAI look like in that future, Azim? Is it just an empty shell with everyone gone to Microsoft?
Well, the mood at the moment is that it may well be an empty shell. There were two camps in OpenAI. There was a camp that was really, really focused on delivering products, AI products, out into the market. These are people aligned with Sam Altman, and that had grown a lot since ChatGPT emerged not even a year ago. And there was a core camp that is deeply, deeply concerned with the existential risk of artificial intelligence to the whole of humanity. And it's that latter camp that won the boardroom coup on Friday. And in a sense, they're the go slow group. So the go fast people are likely to move, and there seems to be a lot of support on X, formerly known, or Twitter, I guess, for people to move to Microsoft and follow Sam Altman. And what I think that leaves in OpenAI is a group of people who are going to move much more slowly, much more methodically, and that may make it less relevant, certainly for enterprises in the coming year or two.
So what does that mean if you, I mean, you talk about the velocity of the concept of AI. What does it mean for you, me, the world, our safety? If you hitch up Microsoft with Sam Altman and Brockman, do I need, as a humble human, do I need to demand more from my government to regulate AI to protect me? I mean, the velocity of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, Brockman, all together, should I be more worried or more excited?
Well, I think we should be more excited because this debate is now in the public eye. So if we just left it and ignored it and made no changes, I think it would be a bit of an uncomfortable outcome. But what we now have is better competition in the market, which has generally served us well as consumers and citizens and as businesses. And we've also highlighted this intellectual schism at the heart of the artificial intelligence community between those who fundamentally believe that it poses a great risk to humanity and those who don't. And we know that the scientific community is also split on that risk. And now what we need to do is have a wider discussion about exactly how that might play out and what steps we need to take to research and understand it further. So when I look at the upside case of all of this, in a sense, if these disagreements were happening behind closed doors in OpenAI for the last 3, 4, 5 quarters, they're now in the open air where they should be, and that's where we can start to take the right kind of steps if any, are needed.
But Azim, is it going to play out in the boardrooms of Alphabet, in the boardrooms of Meta? How much of this is happening outside of the OpenAI, Microsoft sort of atmosphere?
Well, I think that this is probably not been a great outcome for Google. I think on Friday things looked pretty good because OpenAI seemed to have been stumbling. Now that Satya has swept in and built this team, I think Alphabet will look like they were asleep for the last 48 hours. I mean, they had an opportunity here, and perhaps they will get some OpenAI staffers. And I think for all of the firms, they will benefit tangentially by the fact that OpenAI's competitiveness has declined and there'll be more talent out in the market. But so far, Microsoft really
But is there anything of value? Sorry, Azim, just before we let you go, and just to wrap this up, sorry, it just come to me. But then, is there any guts and gore of value left in OpenAI that Alphabet could pick up? Are we discounting too quickly what's left behind?
No, I'm sure there is, right? There are 700 people working in OpenAI. Ilya Sutskever, who is still there, is a phenomenal researcher who was behind many of the breakthroughs we've seen in the last few years. And there is momentum and know-how, and of course the existing GPT-4 and other models. So there is deep value. However, the board stepped up and fired Altman because they were worried about the pace, and it's not clear that they would allow there to be, another big tech firm involved.
Right. I mean, what a coup that would be if it were to happen. Azim, thank you so much for joining us. That's Azim Assar of Bloomberg Originals. Now, coming up, we're going to get you set up for the day, a look at some of the market-moving events to watch. This is Bloomberg.